Texas, winter of 1880. The sound came just after midnight. A sharp scrape of wood against wood, followed by the long groan of a door forced open by the wind. Elias Boone rose from his chair before his mind caught up. His hand moved on instinct, gripping the rifle that never left the wall. Outside, the storm howled like something alive. Snow slammed against the cabin as if trying to break in. Then the figure fell through the doorway. A body hit the floor hard and did not move. Cold air rushed in, stealing the warmth from the room. Elias stepped forward slowly, the rifle steady in his hands. On the floor lay a young Apache woman. She was tall but painfully thin. Her skin was darkened by the sun, her black hair tangled and frozen stiff. Her clothes were torn, barely holding together. Snow clung to her lashes. She lifted her head just enough for him to see her eyes. They were black, deep and burning with something between fear and defiance. "Please," she whispered. Her voice was so weak it almost vanished in the wind. "Let me stay. I will work. Anything. I just need a place to keep warm tonight." For one breathless moment, Elias saw another woman in her place. His wife, years ago, pale and shaking on a narrow bed, begging him with the same eyes. Begging him to save her. His jaw tightened. That life was buried, along with his child. Along with the man he once was, life on the frontier had taught him one lesson above all others. Kindness could kill you. He did not lower the rifle. He moved closer, slow and careful. If this was a trap, it would be his last mistake. But as their eyes met, Elias saw no lies. No hunger for harm. Only exhaustion and a soul clinging to its final thread. The woman swayed, then collapsed again. Elias cursed under his breath. He stepped forward, shut the door against the storm, and grabbed an old blanket from the bed. He draped it over her shoulders. Kea praved him in. Her body shuddered as warmth touched her skin. That night, while snow buried the prairie, two broken lives crossed paths. Inside a small wooden cabin, the fire crackled low in the stove. Shadows danced across the walls, lighting the woman's hollow face. Color slowly returned to her cheeks, but Elias remained stiff and distant. His tall frame leaned against the wall, arms crossed. The rifle stayed close. "What is your name?" he asked. She hesitated, lips cracked and bleeding. "Nayeli." Day studied into the silence. Elias studied her hands. They were rough, scarred. Old whip marks ran along her arms, faded but clear. His stomach tightened. He had seen those marks before on other souls the frontier had chewed up and spit out. "Why come here?" he asked. In a storm like this, her shoulders trembled, but her voice held. "I was left behind. I have nowhere else. I only need warmth. I will cook, clean, work. Please do not send me back out there." The wind screamed through the gaps. In the logs, Elias said nothing. Since the day his wife and son died of fever, no one had crossed his threshold. He had built this place to be empty. Yet those eyes refused to leave him. "Listen carefully," he finally said. "You stay, you work. No lies, no trouble." Nayeli lifted her head. Tears ran freely now, cutting clean lines through the dirt. On her face, she nodded once, firm, like an oath. Elias turned away and added another log to the fire. That night, he lay on his bed with the rifle beside him. Sleep did not come. Across the room, Nayeli curled under the blanket, still shaking. Two strangers, one roof. No trust yet. Only survival. Morning came hard and cold. Elias rose before dawn and stepped outside to check the livestock. The wind bit into his bones. When he returned, he stopped in the doorway. The cabin was different. Firewood was stacked neatly by the stove. The table had been wiped clean. His old coat, torn for years, lay folded with fresh stitching along the sleeve. Nayeli stood there, hands red from the cold. "I said I would not be a burden," she said quietly. Elias said nothing. He set his supplies down, poured water into a cup, and handed it to her. She took it with shaking hands. In the days that followed, the cabin filled with new sounds: knives tapping against wood, a spoon stirring thin soup, footsteps that were not his own. Nayeli worked without complaint. The fire never went out. Meals were simple, but warm. Elias showed her how to lead the horses, how to mend broken fence posts, how to start a fire when the wind fought back. He spoke little, but his eyes no longer held the same sharp edge. At night, they sat near the fire in silence. Shadows stretched long across the walls. A guarded rancher, a scarred Apache woman. No words passed between them, but the space slowly shrank. Once, Elias noticed her fingers brush the scars on her arm. He almost asked. The question died in his throat. Instead, he added another log to the fire. Outside, winter still ruled the prairie. Inside the cabin, something fragile had begun to form. Neither of them knew it yet. But the trial ahead would test more than survival. It would test the walls they had built around their hearts. The cold slowly loosened its grip on the Texas prairie, but the cabin still carried the weight of silence. Elias, Boone, and Nayeli moved through their days side by side, careful not to step too close to the invisible line between them. Work filled the hours. Silence filled the rest. One afternoon, a crazed cow broke through the fence. Elias ran hard, boots slipping in the mud, rope cutting into his hands as he forced the animal back into the pen. The cow kicked wildly. Pain exploded through his arm as a sharp horn scraped his skin. Blood soaked through his sleeve, but he barely noticed. Pain was nothing new. That evening, Nayeli saw the wound. She did not ask permission. She took his arm, gently but firmly, and guided him to the table. Her face was serious, her dark eyes focused. She boiled water, tore clean cloth, and began to clean the gash. Her hands trembled, yet they moved with care. Elias sat still, watching her. The firelight showed the deep lines of tiredness on her face. He spoke without looking away. "Who did that to you?" he asked quietly. "The marks on your arms." Nayeli froze. Her fingers tightened around the cloth. For a long moment, she did not breathe. Then her shoulders sagged, and her voice came out low and broken. "They took me when I was a girl," she said. "Traded me, sold me. When I was no longer useful, they left me. My own people said I brought bad luck. They turned away." Her words poured out, heavy and sharp. "I survived, but I had no place. No name that mattered." The room fell silent except for the fire. Elias's jaw tightened. His hand curled into a fist. "I lost my wife and son," he said at last. "Fever took them in days. I buried them with my own hands. After that, I came here. I thought being alone would keep the pain quiet." Nayeli looked up. For the first time, there was no fear in her eyes, only understanding. That night, the wind outside sounded softer. Trust did not arrive. All at once, it came in small pieces. One morning, Elias returned from town with a sack of seeds. He went to lock them away as always, then stopped. He turned, pulled a key from his pocket, and placed it in Nayeli's hand. "You manage the supplies now," he said. She stared at the key like it might vanish. It was small, but it meant more than food. It meant trust. Days later, a horse kicked. Elias's hand hard. His fingers swelled, red and angry. He tried to ignore it, but Nayeli would not allow that. She made him sit, cut the cloth away, and cleaned the injury. Her voice was firm. "You rest." Elias almost smiled. Their days found a rhythm. Elias worked the land and taught her the hard tasks. Nayeli cooked, cleaned, and watched over him when his body pushed too far. They ate together. They worked together. At night, they sat by the fire, closer now. The space between them no longer empty. One rainy evening, Elias watched her mend his coat. Her hands moved slow and steady. He spoke without thinking. "You do not owe me anything. You can leave whenever you want." Nayeli met his gaze. "I know," she said, "but I do not want to leave. For the first time, I am seen." Something broke open inside him. He stepped closer. His hand hovered, unsure, then brushed a loose strand of hair from her face. She did not pull away. The fire cracked loud in the quiet. Elias leaned down and kissed her. It was awkward, gentle, full of fear and need. But it burned bright by morning. The cabin felt different, warmer, fuller, but the frontier never let peace last long. Whispers began in town. A widower living with an Apache woman, looks followed them. Voices dropped when they passed. One night, Nayeli folded her clothes quietly, hands shaking. "I do not want to bring you shame," she whispered. Elisa's voice turned hard. "You belong here," he said, "with me." The next day, he walked beside her through town. A drunken man reached for her. Elias stopped him cold. His words rang clear. "Anyone who touches her answers to me." The street went silent. They rode home together, shoulders touching. Summer came, hot and bright. One afternoon, Nayeli sat on the steps, tears in her eyes. "Elias," she said, "I am with child." Fear flashed through him. Old grief stirred. Then he looked at her and knew this was not loss. This was life. The next days were filled with hammering. When Nayeli saw the wooden cradle by the bed, she covered her mouth and wept. They sat together at sunset, his arm around her, his hand resting. On her belly, the world still judged. The land was still harsh, but inside that cabin, something strong was growing. Summer settled deep over the Texas prairie, turning the land gold and the sky wide and endless. Heat shimmered above the fields, and cicadas sang from morning until night. Inside Elias Boone's small cabin, life moved slower now, careful and full. Nayeli's body began to change. She walked with one hand resting on her belly, her steps measured. Fear lived in her eyes some days, but hope lived there too. Elias watched her more than he spoke. He fixed broken boards before they could fall. He checked the horses twice each night. Without saying it, he was already protecting something bigger than himself. When the gossip in town grew sharper, Elias stopped caring. Men stared. Women whispered. But he did not lower his head. He rode straight, shoulders squared, Nayeli beside him when she chose to come. The ranch was their world now. The town was only a place to buy salt and bullets. One night, a storm rolled in fast. Thunder cracked open the sky and rain slammed against the roof. Nayeli cried out in pain, sudden and sharp. Elias was at her side in an instant, his heart pounding harder than it ever had in a gunfight. The labor was long. The storm raged on, lightning flashing through the small windows. Elias held her hand, his voice rough but steady, telling her to breathe, telling her she was not alone. When the child finally cried, loud and strong, Elias sank to his knees. A son, small, red-faced, alive. Tears ran down Elias's weathered face as he held the child. Fear loosened its grip for the first time in years. The fever had not taken this. Not tonight. They wrapped the baby in the quilt Nayeli had sewn. Dawn broke soft and pink across the prairie. For the first time, the cabin felt truly full. Weeks passed, sleep was rare. Joy was constant. Elias built a fence around the house. Nayeli sang low songs as she rocked the child. The sound was gentle, ancient, and filled the room with something peaceful. One afternoon, riders appeared on the horizon. 3 men, armed, moving fast. Elias's body went still. He knew that ride. Bounty hunters. They dismounted without greeting. Their eyes went straight to Nayeli and the baby in her arms. "That Apache woman is wanted," one man said. "Escaped property." Elias stepped forward, placing himself between them. His rifle was already in his hands. "She's my wife," he said, "and that's my son." Laughter followed, ugly and cruel. The first shot rang out like thunder. The fight was short and brutal. Elias moved with the calm of a man who had already lost everything once. 2 men fell. The third ran. Blood soaked the dirt outside the cabin, dark against the dry earth. When it was over, Elias stood shaking. Nayeli pressed the baby to her chest, tears streaming down her face. That night, Elias buried the dead far from the house. He returned before dawn and burned the blood-stained boards from the porch. He did not speak of it again, but the message was clear. No one would take his family. Years passed, the ranch grew. The child learned to walk, then run, then ride. Laughter replaced the old silence. The cabin walls held stories now, not ghosts. Elias's hair turned gray. Nayeli's scars faded beneath sun and time. Sometimes they sat together on the porch at sunset, watching the land stretch endlessly before them. "We survived," Nayeli said once, her voice quiet. Elias nodded. "We chose to." When winter came again, it no longer felt like an enemy. The fire burned steady. The house held warmth. Outside, the wind still howled, but inside there was love strong enough to stand against it. In the end, their story was not about war or hatred. It was about 2 broken souls who refused to let the world decide their worth. In a land built on cruelty and fear, they built something else: a home, a family, and a love that stayed.